Perfect. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Brown Queens.
We finally have Fahima on. We're so excited to have you here.
That's correct. So I'm client-centered. My foundation of therapy is built through being person-centered. So whatever clients bring in, I kind of help them navigate through that. And then I do more of a holistic approach when it's kind of more religion or culture or kind of trauma. When it's specific, then it's very much about how the client wants to approach therapy, and I support them with that.
All of the things we're interested in. So when you say holistic approach, like what would be the difference between that and a non-holistic approach? Like what are some techniques you use?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So holistic will be a huge branch where different approaches are combined together, and it's looking at the overall mental, spiritual, overall well-being for the person. So for example, if someone wanted therapy as a goal focused, but they also wanted a space to be held, then I would consider not just being client centered, but also bringing in a bit of CBT work. So when I use more than 1-2 approaches, I look at it as a holistic approach.
Okay, that's awesome.
Do you feel like that's more effective? I mean, in your experience?
Absolutely, because initially when I ask my clients, what do you hope to get out of therapy, they say a few things in the beginning, but once we start therapy, it's almost like a can of worms open. So there's like more going on and more kind of exploration going on within the session. So clients would like to look at, childhood, way back, and it becomes more of a deeper level. So I think having that holistic approach, which means they are more comfortable, and not all different approaches work for one person. So when I get a grasp of what they're actually looking for, it can change. And I think it is very much effective depending on what the client's needs are.
Yeah, I've done like a couple sessions of therapy, like 3 or 4. And I know it's kind of like they say, like dating, like a relationship, like you're getting to know the person and helping them slowly. So as a therapist, what is it like on the other end? Like, are you just kind of like listening and guiding them, and then you slowly start like giving them tips or techniques, or what's your approach?
It is very much about the relationship you have with your therapist, and that is the fundamental kind of start. If you feel like you're not in harmony with your therapist, then there's only so much work you can do. So you need to feel connected with your therapist. Very much, even being a therapist myself, I need to feel connected with my clients. There might be some clients that I don't feel connected to, and I feel like actually there's a limitation here. I don't have the capacity to support this client, and it will be on me to actually talk about this with the client and probably signpost. So both ways, the connection needs to be there. When it comes to tools and techniques, absolutely, I am there to provide different options. When it's family dynamics, then it's like different options. When we're talking specifically about the Brown community, it's very difficult. So for us, it will be baby steps. For example, boundaries, when it's something that we haven't been taught, we don't know what boundaries are. It doesn't exist for the younger generation in the families. You kind of just listen 100%. So it's actually me understanding the cultural side of it and taking that baby step, because every little step is huge for us.
Yeah, I do. That's why I specifically chose a Brown therapist. And I feel like a lot of people do that so that they could kind of relate to the culture. I didn't even realize that therapists look for that connection too. Mm-hmm, but what are things that you mentioned, like boundaries? Like what are other huge issues you see in Brown communities that are patterns or...
I mean, mental health itself being a huge stigma in the community. I'll have a lot of clients who come and talk about them suffering from depression and anxiety, but not having a space to talk about it because, parents are not understanding or friends don't take them seriously. It's kind of attention seeking. Mm-hmm. So that is a huge barrier to be able to speak about it within the family and get that space or validation that actually something's going on, or even to even seek therapy is such a huge step. So when clients even take that step and come to see me, they're already very anxious, very nervous to talk about it because they probably grew up being taught or internalizing that we don't talk about family problems outside the four walls. So just to
or
be
even
able
emotion.
absolutely. And when we talk about mental health, emotion, psychological, and the social part is so huge. So if emotion hasn't been kind of taught how to regulate or how to be when you're angry, sad, feeling low, how to learn the coping strategies to be able to even voice that, it's very difficult. And to even kind of talk to a therapist about it, it's breaking that barrier and feeling validated. You think, oh my God, the first time someone's actually listening to me, I'm making sense, I'm not crazy. Wow, all of these things come up in sessions.
We were talking about that the other day, like as like a brown girl in like, in a brown family, you feel like you're not heard all the time. So you have to like scream and yell sometimes. And like, even then when you're screaming and yelling, they think you're begging for attention, but it's like, no, I'm going crazy. No one listens to me.
Yeah,
you
develop these like really unhealthy habits. And like even our parents like have such unhealthy like habits
Yes.
and like the mental health and everything like that, and they do the best that they can based on like what they've learned, but like it's hard not to like also inherit those. So it's like we really have to like change the way that we kind of like handle our emotions and everything.
Sure.
What would you say are like things that you like usually recommend to like your clients as like coping mechanisms or expressing their emotions or just dealing with anxiety?
So I kind of work with the older generation and the younger generation as well. This is kind of going away from a bit of what you've asked me, but just kind of to touch on my older generation clients is that, clients that have age between 50, 60, when they come and talk about what's going on for them, is very much they're telling me about the physical pain because they can't express the emotions. And then when I talk to the younger generation and about, how they can speak to parents, I always say to them, practice in front of the mirror what you want to say. And it's okay if you cry. A lot of my clients would say, but I'm going to cry. How am I going to say this to my parents? And I always say, it doesn't matter. As long as you feel like you can say what you need to say in a few words, say it and practice in front of the mirror and do it consistently every so often. Try not to feel overwhelmed by it, because I think the hardest thing for us is, especially as girls as well, which you touched on, our voice isn't heard. So when we are kind of screaming or shouting, wanting that attention, we also looked at, oh God, there's another one just wanting attention. Actually, attention is taken in a very way that is stigma, but actually there's nothing wrong in wanting attention. As humans, we want attention, we want the love, we want care. What's wrong with that? So
that's what we're going to tell to our boyfriends next.
What's wrong with that?
She said that wanting attention is okay.
Perfectly fine.
yeah. And it's, I think a lot of shame is attached with that, because we think, oh no, we're going to be seen as needy. But there's a level of care, love, and attention we all need as humans, and it's important for our own kind of process of journey in life. So I'm kind of losing my trail of thoughts, but the younger generation, when they come right now, it's about the communication with parents and how is that going to happen, because a lot of the time they grew up not having the voice, being told their voice doesn't matter, their opinions don't matter, adults are kind of always right. So it's those, again, baby steps of how to have that communication with parents.
Do you have a step-by-step program? Like, I know you were saying that you want them to speak in the mirror and practice that, but sometimes, our brown parents are so hard-headed, as you were saying, they think what they say goes, and, there's all these rules that are like, God knows where they came from. So is there like a program that you kind of do, or do you just work with them like based on, their situation?
I very much work based on what they bring in, because I still want to believe that each case is very different and everyone's experiences are very different with their parents. Some parents are more difficult in other things. For example, moving out, and other parents are okay with moving out. Or some parents are not okay with you not getting married. So it's what the clients bring in, and then I work with that, and they tell me. And a lot of it is the steps not taken because of the underlying fear of actually what's going to happen, or what's the community going to say, or what will they think of. And these are all internalized values of our parents' generation. And actually, I've had clients who've taken that first step and they're like, oh, you know what, Fahima, it wasn't that bad. I was like, okay, so a lot of it is just passed on generational trauma that we hold on.
I know. I feel like that's one of the biggest issues in communities like ours is we're always worried about like what the community is going to say or judgment. I was like just facing this literally this week. And it's from our parents, but it's almost like it is passed down each generation.
Yeah, and that's what we carry with us, like the guilt, and like this is kind of going away from a little bit of like the family pressure.
Yeah.
Like, do you deal with a lot of kids that or adults that feel like they have all this family pressure, so they can't talk about their feelings, or they have to be the strong one, or like even being a daughter, for example, like with us, like we're supposed to take care and take all the problems on, and the boy, you know, it's okay, you know, he's the boy. Like, do you get a lot of that?
A lot of that, yes. Kind of a lot of the clients I get, a lot of my clients are women, and they talk about how difficult it is for them. And it's almost like we're sponges. We're expected to just take on everyone's problems and not have a breakdown ourselves or have a space to talk about it. And if we are having a breakdown, because I've always seen you as a strong one, oh my God, you're having a breakdown, you know, it's almost like a shock. But we're humans, so we need that space. We need to cry sometimes. We need to be angry and find ways to express that anger in a healthy way. And not having that space is what causes this, you know, we end up suppressing it, and then we do burst one day, and that comes out in an unhealthy way sometimes.
Yes, screaming, yelling.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who does that.
And I think even the men, like, since they're taught in a completely different fashion that they're not even allowed to have emotions, they like are so bad at expressing themselves. So then when they feel something, they just like don't know what to do with it, and it turns into like something unhealthy.
Yeah, because men don't cry, which is the most famous line, right? They're supposed to be this person as a robot, just get through life and look after and not show emotions, or it's a sign of weakness. And we get told that too, like crying is a sign of weakness, or we're just kind of getting through life. And our parents done that. They've come to this country, worked hard, they didn't show emotions, they just got on with it because that's what you do. And we're trying to learn that, but it's very difficult for us. Our struggles is very much valid as well, but it's a different struggle that this generation goes through.
Yeah, I feel like you hit the nail on the head with like they focus on getting through life, whereas our generation is figuring out how to like live life at the same time. So there's like this difference in like when our parents are telling us things, they're like, well, you don't need to do that, or you shouldn't do that, because they're just like, you need to be completely proper because we're just getting through life.
Survival. Yes. That's what it is. It's like you're not living, you're surviving.
Yes. But with us, we're like, well, we don't want to make those decisions, even if the community thinks this, or even if that thinks that, because our happiness is actually important to us.
Yeah.
And to them, those things are what brings happiness. You know what I mean? Your education, this, that, you know, respect what people say. But in our generation, we're like, I don't care what people say, but I do, but I don't, you know?
Not if it interferes with like our mental health.
Exactly. Steering away from that though, I wanted to ask you, how about social media pressures? Is there anyone, like, do you have clienteles that tell you like, you know, what people are saying online affects them, how people look online makes them feel like they're not pretty enough or handsome enough?
Because we've talked about this on our podcast a few times, but like this generation has to deal with a whole different level of pressure because of technology.
Absolutely. I have, you know, it's really upsetting to hear sometimes, even as a therapist, when I see that. And I'm very much with social media, and I see it, and I can see how much of an influence it can have. And I find a lot of it very toxic, in the sense that we're supposed to, it's giving the atmosphere that we're supposed to have this perfect life, have things together, look a certain way, have a certain lifestyle. Young people, when they come in, kind of the low self-esteem and confidence is really high. Body image, they talk about body image, and they'll talk about how they can't look at themselves in the mirror because they're not a certain way, or they continuously weigh themselves, or don't take selfies because of how they think they look. And it's really sad because that's impacting on their confidence and self-esteem and self-worth.
Yeah.
And the comparison, always comparing between, this person is by this age and has it all together and she's got it all figured out, or this person, is married with kids and I'm not married yet. Marriage comes up so much. It's unbelievable.
I know. I feel that pressure too. And I definitely think that's like a brown thing, because it's just like you're subconsciously taught like you just need to get married.
Yeah, like I'm ancient in my mom's eyes right now.
Yeah.
Like I should have had like 5 kids by now.
Yeah. And that does come up. And for those that don't want to get married, there's a lot of judgments there, like, what's wrong with you? Is there actually something wrong with you?
Yeah.
Which is horrible. But yeah, so the kind of body image, eating disorder, all of those things come up a lot. And I think it's very much because they're comparing their lives with other people on social media and what they're taking in. And I always advise, when you're on social media, there's so much resources that you can actually benefit from. Try and change your feed around. Follow people that that actually motivate you. And if you come out of an influence of feeling sad, then maybe it's about unfollowing, and that's okay, because you're putting a boundary and you're looking after your mental health. Let it be that you're feeling motivated and inspired. You can achieve that goal, put a plan down. But if you're feeling sad and depressed, it's time to unfollow.
100%. I've definitely did that. I unfollowed a lot of people that made me feel like I would like they were, not that they were better than me, that I was comparing myself to,
and it has nothing to do with them. It's
Yeah.
just like you're training yourself not to be so like, oh, look at the way they're living their life. You mentioned boundaries. I feel like that word is like a huge buzzword right now. And I think it's so important. I recently learned boundaries, but like, how would you, for people that aren't aware of boundaries, like how would you define it, or how would you say like, what are healthy boundaries?
Yes, boundaries is very much used everywhere. For me, boundaries is kind of overall my personal space, my social space, social media, family, work, every part of my life where I know external thing can impact me. I need to kind of review and reassess my boundaries. And it might be, and you probably see posts of, therapists saying it's okay to say no. We get taught that saying no is rude, or we get taught kind of saying talking back is rude, but actually to be able to voice your opinion and saying how you feel is okay. And I think it's important that we normalize sharing your opinion, sharing what's important to you is important. When it comes to boundaries, I think for individuals, you really need to look at what's important for you. You really need to look at, am I shrinking myself for someone else? Am I feeling, if I'm in a conversation, in a group, am I feeling sad and am I not voicing that? Why not? What's going on? And that's the only process journey that you'll actually start learning about yourself. And become familiar with who you are, or is it someone else's values you're taking on?
Wow, that's so great.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me to relationships, which we talk about all the time.
All day.
I feel like you could give us the best advice. What are like, you'd say, red flags that people should look for in relationships, and maybe like green flags? But we can focus on red flags. I feel like that's more important.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So relationships, I think before you meet a person, it's really important, and I say this to all my clients, it's really important that you know what you're looking for. You know what you're okay with, you know what your limitations are and what you're happy to compromise on. I think a lot of the times when we don't know what we want, we go in kind of searching, but not knowing what we're searching, if that makes sense. Like, this one is right, but in conversations, kind of, if you see someone that is totally into you the first day, ready to kind of take you to Clyde 9, I would question that, because it's a jump from 0 to 100. I think very much for me personally is seeing how your conversation is. What's important to you, ask the questions that are important to you, talk about emotional intelligence. What does that mean to you? What does it mean for them? I think at an age when I was young, I wouldn't think about these things, but right now it's actually, how much is this guy going to project on me, and I need to know if he has worked through that. And it's about having these conversations, because everyone has a story and everyone's got experiences they've gone through, but have they worked it out? You don't want to meet someone who's projecting all that on you. And to be in harmony with each other with that, because we all go through things, and how am I going to support that person through this where it's not impacting me? Of course, the obvious ones with red flags is someone who's manipulative, gaslighting, but these things I feel like it wasn't taught previously. I think there's a lot of posts now and everyone talks about these things, but the way it creeps up in someone's life is very subtly, so we don't see it.
We're not like, this is gaslighting or this is manipulation. It's just like you look back and you're like, wow, that was that.
Yeah, because you're blinded at that moment. Yeah.
Yes, for example, if someone is controlling, like it happens subtly. So it could be like they're completely fine with you, and then slowly it'll be like, oh, why is this person following you on social media? Can you unblock them? Or I don't like that dress you're wearing. And it would be those little, and we'll probably be okay with the first few ones, but that's where it goes wrong. The fact that we were okay with the first few ones, we become used to saying yes and obeying that, and we lose ourselves in that process. So I would really this is why the importance of knowing who you are and what you're okay with compromising on is very, very important.
Yeah.
How about abuse? Like, I know that you help a lot of people with abuse, and I feel like abuse is very common in the brown community as well. What is your advice to somebody who is going through emotional and physical abuse? I know a lot of people, tell people just leave, and it's not that easy. So what would your advice be for them?
My advice, kind of looking at both scales, is for someone who's going through abuse is that, we see, we know, we believe that you're going through these things, and, I understand if you can't leave because of kids, because of finance, because of community, because of shame. I understand those things. But I'll always also say is, if you did want to leave, be it for yourself and not because for anybody else. And I think it's really hard for women or men to leave relationships because of the community, more so for women because of the stigma that she couldn't hold a marriage down or a relationship down, right? And the divorce that comes after it and the stigma around that. And I think, they're seen in a light where, why she's staying, so that means she's okay with the abuse. A lot of judgments are come their way, or she's not leaving, that means it's actually not that bad, or others have it worse, and those things really invalidate people's experiences. Abuse, when I initially started my therapy, I worked for 3 years in a domestic violence specialist service. Wow. And the amount of abuse the community, and it was specifically Asian community that I was working with, the amount of abuse that was going on but not spoken about, it just threw me off. How that's how high it was.
So it's always put under the rug because of what people will say and embarrassment. And I think, like you were saying, the stigma of mental health, I feel like that's the number one mistake people make. Nowadays people are reaching out more, I would feel like, for mental health help. But I feel like, if someone were to look back, like, maybe 50 years from now at our generation, they would wonder why we didn't use our resources for mental health. What I mean?
I actually have a follow-up question to her question, not in an abusive relationship, but like in a lot of relationships are work. So when do you know whether you should fight for something or leave? Like, I feel like this is something that everybody could relate to.
I mean, even when my clients kind of say, when do I know when to leave? And I always say, you'll know when you know that you're fed up and you've had enough, you will walk away. I can't tell you to walk away, and it's not my role to tell you to walk away, but you'll know. And that time does come for everybody. You'll see it Yeah, I think even I was reading an article before, like statistically, it takes a lot of times for abuse to happen when a woman decides to actually leave, and that's because we're so hopeful that a man will
Yes.
change. He's going to change this time, and this is the thing that we hold on to, but it's a fantasy that we create, and actually we need to ask ourselves, is he aligning with our values, or am I actually making this false interpretation of what's going to happen, or am I having a fantasy about it? And when it comes to leaving, ask yourself, who was I before I was in this relationship? How much have I changed?
That's true. And if it's for the better or the worse as well.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Amen to that.
Can you be my therapist? I know you're in London or England, but
Yeah.
I feel like you have a lot of good tips. So what are green flags for relationships? Also, I loved what you said about projecting when guys project. So those are two questions, I guess. But can you talk a little bit more about projecting?
Yes. So for me, I think everyone should go to therapy.
I agree.
Right? And I think it's not, a lot of the time, even going to therapy, there's so much stigma attached with that. Like, we don't diagnose you with anything. That is completely separate. Therapy is a space for you to talk and learn about yourself or talk about your struggles. Everyone needs that space for themselves. We're so busy all week, 1 hour a week, every week for yourself. You deserve it. And I think it's important to, especially when it comes to projection, and that's why I brought it up, is because when you're in relationships, and we've got friends, we've got family, we're always in relationship with one another. So when we haven't got our own stuff figured out, it comes out as triggers and projection. If it could be the smallest thing where I felt someone ignored me, but actually they didn't hear me. And it's gone back to childhood when I've always felt ignored. So if I'm not aware of what's going on for me and what my triggers are, they will show up and I might project my feelings onto someone else. This is why it's so important to be able to work towards self-awareness and self-healing when we talk about inner child and giving the love you need. It's because so we can maintain these relationships in a healthy way and understand each other.
Wow, that's so important. That's why I feel like people should definitely be alone and work on themselves before they get into relationships, because we all have baggage, insecurities, flaws, and it's okay to have those things. But if you have no level of self-awareness, you're always projecting that onto your relationships.
Absolutely.
Even without even realizing it.
Yes.
Sometimes when I get checked about something I'm doing with my significant other and I try to go back and I'm like, wow, this actually comes from childhood, like, why are you like this? Why do you, start screaming? And I'm like, oh, I don't, because that's how I used to try to get the attention of my parents, I guess, and you start thinking about those things later when somebody actually is willing to work with you, you realize that you're not just crazy. It's just built up, stuff from throughout the years.
Yeah.
For those people who are thinking about it, I would say every therapist offers a 15-minute consultation for free most of the time. Pick up the phone and get yourself to talk to them. See, as you're speaking to, your teacher or your doctor or even your friend, vision that you're speaking to someone that you're comfortable speaking to. Have that conversation. The moment you pick up the phone and speak to a therapist, it makes it a lot easier, because that's when the comfort comes, because the therapist will talk to you, ask you questions, or probably will just listen to you and you'll feel heard. So it's taking that initial step. You don't need to, after the consultation, you don't even need to get back to the therapist. You can take some time out. You might say no, and that's okay. But to take that initial step, to have that 10 minutes conversation will make a big difference. If you can do that first step, the rest of it, it's your choice.
That's great.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Do you have any more questions for Fahima?
I could talk to you for 2 hours. I don't think so. I mean, are there relationship green flags? Are there things that you would point out that you're like, okay, yes, that's good?
Yes. Yeah, you asked me that twice and I keep kind of rambling
no,
on.
it's okay.
Wants that answer.
I'm like, yeah.
She's dating, so she needs to know.
Yeah. So green flags in relationships. You feel heard. You've got a space to kind of talk about your experiences, how you feel. You feel validated. You feel like the person is actually taking the time out to listen to you. One really great advice I'd give is if you feel stuck in your relationship, whether it's you or your partner, the best question you can ask is, what do you need? A lot of times we make assumptions or we think we're being helpful, and maybe that's not what the person needs. So, this question of what do you need can, make such a big difference, because I feel like actually this person is giving me the power to share how I feel or what I need. So if I want to say I don't need anything, they listen. Um, so kind of feeling heard, feeling validated, being able to make time for each other. If you feel like this person's making effort, making time for you, is interested in deep conversation, is interested about your life, is interested about kind of your experiences, your childhood, these deep conversations, then he's definitely a keeper, because he's interested in you, the whole of you, wants to know who you are, through all your experiences, what's that's made of you, your future, what you're interested in. All of those things shows that this person is interested in you, and having that conversation all the time about kind of how are you today, how is your mental state today. Having that check-in every day shows that this person cares about you, and is not just kind of giving talking about themselves all the time or telling you what to do.
A lot of guys do that.
Yes. So it's more about both of you, and you're in harmony with each other, supporting each other, than about the one person all the time. Or that we hear the word compromise so much, but a lot of the times I've seen in relationships, it's always one person doing it, and they're the ones that's talking about compromise, which is really frustrating, because actually what does that word mean? So to be able to kind of work with each other and wanting to know what your relationship, say what you want your relationship to look like, say what you want. A lot of the times we guess or we assume, one doesn't know, the communication is really flat. So it's important, just say, even when you think it's obvious, it's not obvious. Say what you want and what's going to make you happy.
Okay, that was great.
There you go.
We just gave a free therapy session to everyone.
Well, if anyone wants to continue their therapy session with you, where can they find you?
Yes, so you can find me on my Instagram. I've got a link on my bio, which has my website. You can always drop me an email. So my social media, which is fahima.therapy, and my email is there. You can just press on the tab and there's my website there. You can reach out to me.
Just as easy as that, you guys. Just
Thank you so much for talking to us. This was amazing.
Yes.
We might have to do like bi-monthly check-ins with you or something.
I know.
Like we need you back on when we're talking about certain things.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Okay, so Fahima was just on. I love her.
She's really cute. She's cute.
I literally was like, can you be my therapist?
I know.
Because I just like all the advice you're giving me.
You could be Zoom, she could be your Zoom therapist.
I know, right? And I'm like, what are the laws? Like, can I have a therapist in England?
I think so. You can have a therapist wherever you want, girl.
Yeah, okay.
The laws. I'm like, the laws should be we should all
for health insurance. I don't know.
Mandatory, I feel like. Oh yeah, you'd have to probably pay her though, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think, but whatever. Either way, it can
Shout out Fahima though, because that was like a free therapy session.
That really was. They really doesn't it feel like we all live the same life?
Yeah.
We literally
we have the same problems.
Same problem.
And if everybody just worked on their insecurities and flaws, we'd all be better people.
We'd be great.
This is why they say, like, if everybody went to therapy, we'd all literally be such better people.
I don't understand how people don't take advantage of therapy.
Especially if you have insurance. If you have insurance, 1000% go. Like, what my question is, you don't even have to tell anybody. You could just go.
Just go. Nobody
are you
needs
just
to know.
afraid of like yourself knowing your flaws, or I don't know what the stigma is.
I think it's maybe facing your flaws. Like
Yeah.
we're supposed to be so perfect growing up and stuff. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I don't know, like going to therapy, I feel like in our culture is such a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
But it's not weakness. It's
And then-
actually making you stronger.
Yeah, and then even less men go to therapy, and I definitely think men should go to therapy.
Y'all need more help than we
Yeah,
do. Just
you're
FYI.
projecting left and right on us.
Yes.
Your insecurities, your ego.
You guys need the help. But no, not even in like a mean way. Like it's gonna make you a better person. I feel like I'm actually thinking about to go to therapy.
Oh my god, go to therapy. Like,
Yes.
should we start again together? Because I had a few sessions, but I kind of stopped
Really?
in
Okay.
between. So maybe we could go on this therapy journey together.
We should. And let me tell you why. Actually, I told you I didn't have any stories today, but I do. So it was about Valentine's Day. We were
Yeah.
like, he told me he was gonna take me somewhere, and I was like, why would you take me there? You took me there for my birthday. You took your coworkers there. It's not even. It's like first world problem.
Yeah,
it's not even like a big problem. Like some people can't even afford to go to Valentine's Day dinner.
Yeah.
But when I was my last day of my period, and I don't know, I was just like,
But it's okay to acknowledge your needs. Like in the words of Fahima, like, you know, it's just like you have to ask yourself, like, what do you need right now? Like,
Yeah.
if that's what you need
I don't
to
wanna fake
feel
it.
loved,
Yeah.
then like, you know, that's what you
see,
need.
there you go. That's what I need. But I don't want to feel like, I didn't want to like fake it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, like New York is known for the best dining in the world. Like
Yeah.
that's the place you want to go where we've been so many times. And he was like, well, yeah, dining just opened up, blah, blah, blah. And in my head, I was thinking like, wow, you didn't even want to put in the effort, you know?
Yeah.
And then he was like, okay, we'll go somewhere else. We don't have to go there. And I'm like, well, if you want to go there, let's just go. You know?
No, but don't do that.
Yeah.
See, I feel like you either have to commit to being like, no, this is what I need,
Yeah.
or being like, okay, I'm totally okay with that. But
Yeah.
then you run into issues where you like compromise, but you're actually internally like not okay
Exactly.
with that compromise.
Exactly. And that's what he called out. He's like, no, we're not going to go. And I'm like, okay. And then he was just like, but I want to know your thought process of like why you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, my thought process is one, it seems like you don't want to put an effort.
Yeah.
Two, it's like we've been there. You go there with your coworkers. It's not really like that special to me.
Yeah.
And you know, and I would just feel like you could, you know, it could be more special. Like the first stuff is always really important to me.
Well, I feel like you voiced that really well. Like that
Yeah.
sounds reasonable.
And I'm like, and anyways, I'm like, yeah, I was like, but I just feel like you don't get it. Because even with the Dominican Republic thing, remember he took another girl there?
You're like, you can't take me to
You
this
can't take
entire country.
country that for New Year's, you know, but I'm like that, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just the thing.
That's just who you are.
That's just how I am, yeah. But then, like, I don't know what happened, but like, he was just being very, like, I don't know if he was being mean or if it was just me, like, thinking he was being mean, but he was just not having my attitude. And I was
Yeah.
just like, what's your problem? Like, like, why are you not listening to me? Anyways, long story short, I ended up losing my shit, like, screaming. Yeah, and I usually, like, it takes me a lot to do that. And I was screaming and I was yelling, and he just wasn't even, like, fazed by it. He was like, I'm not going to give in to that. And I was like, give it to what? Like, you know what I mean? And I was just like, the way I was acting, I realized I was being my teenage self back home. Because no one would, like, care.
Okay, so maybe that it triggered you. It triggered you that he wasn't like hearing you.
Yes, that's
Like
what it was.
it's like I'm not overreacting like this. I'm telling you what I need and I need you to listen.
Exactly.
So because you're not listening,
Mhm.
now I'm reacting.
Yep, that's exactly.
Look at us using our therapy
Exactly.
skills.
And then he realized it a day later, but the whole day he was being just really mean. Like
Yeah.
he didn't, like, he thought I was throwing a tantrum because I was being a brat, but it was like, no, like I really have some internal issues of not being heard.
Yeah.
And he was so like, I don't know what was wrong with him. I don't know if he was just like, oh, I'm not going to deal with this, but I was really emotional. And then the next day I started to like read up on it and think about it. And I was like, I really have issues from being, from being younger.
Yeah.
I used to have to scream to be heard, and no one would listen to me still, so it was just like the norm.
Yeah.
Me losing my shit was
Yeah,
normal.
like childhood trauma. I definitely think that we should go to therapy to face those. But I still think like your opinion is valid. Like
Of
you
course.
said, like your feelings were still valid in that moment, just maybe not the expression of
Not
them.
the expression, yeah. He actually he calmed down the next day, and he was just like, I should have been more empathetic. And I'm like, that's all I needed.
Good,
I'm like,
good.
that's
We
all
all need a little empathy.
Yes, I'm like, it's not sympathy. I'm like, I don't know what lesson you're trying to teach me by not being empathetic. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not your daughter. Like I told him that.
Yeah.
I'm like, you being you trying to sit there and be like, oh, I'm going to be stern. I'm like, that's not going to help.
Yeah,
you know
I
what
need
I
you
mean?
to hear me.
Yeah, I need you to hear me. But anyways, but after that, I realized I'm like, I need to go to therapy. I shouldn't be losing my shit over dinner.
What a perfect episode then that we had.
Yes, that was really perfect.
This was our first therapy session.
It was our therapy. It pretty much knocked that off first time. But it's okay, guys. Like, even like, you know, women like us that you guys like to see that are super confident, like, we also need to go to therapy.
Yeah, we do. Everybody, like she said, everybody should go to therapy because nobody's perfect, and all those insecurities and flaws that we all have should be like dealt with so that we don't project.
Amen. Projecting. And
no projecting in 2021.
No projecting and no not taking advantage of such a great resource that we have in this world.
Exactly.
Speaking of mental health issues.
So I was going to bring up what's so funny is she was talking about like stigmas in the community and like pressure in the community or whatever. So my cousin in India this week was telling my mom like that I like kind of post like promiscuous pictures and things like that, which by the way I do not at all, and I would never.
She's just hot. Sorry.
But this cousin of mine, like we all have that one person in like our Indian families or whatever that just gossips and talks like crazy. They're like a housewife and they just talk about everyone in the family.
They're miserable.
Yes. Yeah, and she is that. And I'm like, what are you doing telling my mom this stuff? And then my mom came into my room and was like, what are you posting? I'm like, Mom, I'm not posting anything bad.
What is she doing on Instagram anyway? Stalking
She actually didn't even know it was Instagram. My mom doesn't know Instagram exists, thankfully. She thought it was Facebook.
Oh, God.
I was like, truly, Mom, nothing on Facebook.
Yeah, y'all hear a lot.
Yeah.
But no, that again is like, one, that's unnecessary for her to be saying. She should be minding her business. Two, that's projection.
Yes, it is projection.
She's probably...
She like wanted to be a Bollywood star. Like, it's projection.
See, and now she's married and she has kids. Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong.
But I've noticed that happens to me as well from people that aren't even my family, where they're just so angry because they want to do what you're doing or look the way you're looking. You know what I mean?
It's like, hey, but it sucks because it does subconsciously get in your head, like
because you start looking, you're like, what am I posting?
Literally, I was like, am I too like promiscuous? Am I too this? Am I too that?
No, I'm way more promiscuous than you are.
I know. I was like overthinking everything. Like, should I do the busted challenge? Should I not? I'm afraid to post it now.
Speaking of
like,
that,
I'm so afraid. I hate and this is in all communities that women get put in these boxes. Like, I'm so afraid that people will put me in certain boxes that I like. I'm afraid to do things. And it's like, I have 2 degrees, I'm smart, we have brains, we have heart, like we're like very well-rounded women, and yet still like, I'm afraid they'll see one picture and put me in a box.
That's my whole life. I've heard that I've had somebody like message me or somebody say that someone said that I'm not marriage material, but I'm so marriage material.
That's why I'm like, I hate society. Like, I wish men would just, and men never get put in boxes. So
no.
Like, I wish men, I wish society would be like that towards women, like, just because you do this one thing doesn't mean anything. Like, we're multifaceted beings. We could be Rihanna one day and like, I don't even know, Selena Gomez the next.
Right.
Like, you know, like we'd be going to church on Sunday, reading a book on Saturday night, and like,
and next Sunday I could
wear
wear brunch.
A cute dress
like,
together.
Like, who cares?
It's just
we're well-rounded. They only see black and white. You're either this or you're that. There's no like rounded for people. And it sucks because you would think in 2021, people would get with the program, but you know, it's our job to change it, and thank God for these platforms that we have. But it's really annoying. Like, it takes me a long time sometimes. Like, now I'm very like prone to it, like the shit people talk to me. But before, I used to be like, why are they saying that about me?
Yeah, that's how I am right now.
Yeah, it's like, no, she's just projecting it onto you. Like, it is. What else could it be? And it's like, why is she on Instagram? Go make roti.
Yeah.
Like, stop.
Exactly.
Like, go watch.
Why are you even stalking me?
Yeah, go watch some soap operas. But it's like you're so obsessed, and you're obsessed for a reason. So.
Yeah. Speaking of Rihanna,
shout
out
Brown
Rihanna.
Queen.
She is our Brown Queen of the Week because she posted about the farmers.
She did. She reposted and she said, why, actually she didn't repost, she put her own link on her own, and she said, why are we not talking about this? So shout out to her. She's actually doing more than actual Bollywood actors in India who like to wear turbans in Bollywood movies and act like they're farmers and they're, you know, Sikhs and this and that, but they don't say shit when the shit really goes down. So shout out to Rhea.
Yes, we love you, Rihanna.
Yep.
If you ever want to be on this podcast,
let us
call us.
Yeah, but all of the Brown Instagram, so everybody's going crazy because Rihanna posted. So shout out to her brown queen. Her and Fahima are our brown queens of the week.
Yes, them too.
But your date is coming up.
It is coming up. 2 days. I'm so excited.
Please go to the date.
I'm gonna go. I'm excited. But you know what I was thinking?
Yes.
So Valentine's Day is next week, right? Which, by the way, we'll have like a little Valentine's Day segment. But is it like, it's so interesting, like when you just start dating somebody, like,
yes,
are they gonna approach Valentine's Day or will they ignore it?
So
I feel like guys are more likely to ignore it early on.
Yeah, because it saves you the trouble and you know what I mean?
The pressure.
Like my birthday, for example, like, you know, the guy I'm with right now, I was only seeing him for about a couple weeks.
I know, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then he took me to dinner, but he didn't get me a present. He got me a card.
Which I think is good.
It's nice. It's a really cute card.
Too early for a present.
Too early for a present, because what if we don't work out, but still did enough? But I think Valentine's Day is more like a choice. You know what I mean? Like birthday, you're not gonna just be like, you know. Yeah, like, sorry. So I think it depends how your first date's gonna go.
I think so too.
Yeah, and then he's gonna be like, oh, Valentine's Day is next week, or he's not gonna say anything. So
we will see. To
be continued, you guys. I mean, as a woman, I guess because we're such romantics, you're like, you should ask me.
I know. Don't you want to hang out with me?
Yeah, you want to be alone on Valentine's Day, but as like, you know, an adult, I guess, if you think about it.
But you know, actually, yeah, it's like I wouldn't want to be alone, but then again, like I don't know if I want to spend it with somebody who I'm not that invested in yet either.
Yeah.
So let me turn it on myself because it's like I don't know. I'm just
Same.
Casually exploring things, so I'm kind of okay with not being with anybody.
I partied on Valentine's Day last year.
What did I do? I think I went on a friend date, which is cute.
That's
we
what
went
you
to
should
like an
do.
Italian restaurant in LA.
See, that's more fun anyways, you guys. It's
yeah,
fun.
because it's like actually
you don't need
people you
men.
love. It's a celebration of love. All kinds of
You
love.
can love your friends, your family. Take your mom out. I don't know. It's all good.
That is cute.
Yeah, that'd be cute. Make your mom your Valentine. Your dad, somebody else. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys hit up Fahima and see what she's all about.
Subscribe to our YouTube, leave a comment on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, go on our Instagram, Brown Queens Pod, message us, email us, everything, all the things.
Everything. We've been getting a lot of messages from people saying they love our podcast, so thank you guys.
Thank you.
And see you next